Good morning and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hashim with the Local Connection on US Arab Radio. Happy Friday to all and thank you for listening. We have a great show for you today. President Trump argues that a Columbia University student should be deported because he protested the Israeli war on Gaza. Other people have accused him of hate speech for being anti-Semitic or support of other organizations that we deem terrorist organizations, and that he should be deported. Do non-citizens who are lawfully in the U.S. have First Amendment rights? And what is hate speech? With us this morning is Barbara McQuade. She is former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District in Detroit and a professor from practice at Michigan law at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Khalil. I'm happy to be with you.
I appreciate it. Before we talk about hate speech, do people who are, like for example, students who have visas, people who have green cards, so forth and so on, they are non-citizens. Do they have First Amendment rights?
They do, and I think that's why it is so troubling to see what has happened to Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia. The administration has relied on a provision in the statute that says that the Secretary of State may remove a non-citizen if he deems that they pose a serious threat to the foreign relations of the United States. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he is relying on that provision to remove and revoke the green card of Mahmoud Khalil. It seems that Mr. Khalil's only conduct that created this issue is his very vocal protest on behalf of Gaza and Palestinians at Columbia University. Now, it could be that there's more information that is not publicly known about affiliations with Hamas or other kinds of things. And a judge has now ordered a hearing on this case to determine whether Secretary of State Rubio has exercised this authority appropriately. But I think, Cleo, what's concerning about this is, if you're a U.S. citizen, you can speak and say what you want under the First Amendment. Even people who are simply here, even if they are not green card holders, as Mr. Khalil is, have First Amendment rights and have due process rights. So the idea that he was arrested and put into removal proceedings without at least public knowledge of any other wrongdoing, I think is really concerning to all of us. And, I know at Columbia University, you hate to see this, but they are cautioning their students who are not U.S. citizens to kind of lie low and keep their heads down until they graduate, which, has a really stifling effect on free speech.
It's really sad that if you can't express yourself at universities, this is the normally the place where people exercise their rights. It's really sad. We get to that point. Could the government, even if they're successful with this, could they go even further? For example, talking to people who are naturalized citizens, saying we can take your citizenship away.
So the answer should be an absolute no. People can be stripped of their citizenship, but only if they committed fraud in obtaining it in the first place. A person should not, under the law, lose their citizenship for free speech. But I only say should because I have been alarmed by some of the things we've seen by this administration, which seems to be operating under a mode of let's push the limits as far as we can go until a judge tells us to stop. And based on some of the things they've done in recent days, it's even become a question as to whether the administration will obey court orders. So I think when we're operating in that kind of a system, I'm sure part of the goal here is to chill speech that might be critical of the administration, because if people are fearful about what might happen to them personally, they may be less likely to stick their necks out. But I think with regard to a naturalized U.S. citizen, unless a person obtained that citizenship by fraud, they cannot be stripped of it simply based on what they are saying publicly.
Now, if the administration does not listen to the court, wouldn't that be a violation of the separation of powers?
Boy, it sure would.
Powers, yeah.
And, we've been seeing some things already. Over the weekend, there was this order by a judge to turn planes around that had left after he issued an order to halt a deportation program that he found was likely to be illegal in violation of a statute called the Alien Enemy Act, which is supposed to apply only in times of war. And there's been all kinds of excuses after the fact that his oral order didn't count, which is nonsense, that the planes had already left. It appears one left after his order, or that once they were in foreign airspace, he no longer had jurisdiction, which, again, if these are U.S. Officials, he certainly has jurisdiction over them. So it's very concerning that I think there's some dispute about whether they violated a court order, but it seems like they have. And there are other people, including a man named Tom Homan, who President Trump has appointed his border czar, that he has said, I don't care what the judges say, we're going to keep coming, something to that effect. They need to care what judges say. It is the law that they care what judges say. The president has a lot of authority, especially in the immigration space, but he is the executive. It is his job to take care that the laws be executed faithfully. And so Congress writes the laws, the president executes the laws, and if he overreaches, it is the court's job to say, stop, you are violating the law. And so to disobey a court order is a violation of the Constitution.
Now, if the government says to someone, you're protesting, you're supporting Hamas, Hamas is considered a terrorist organization by the United States, therefore you're in violation of the law, we can deport you. Can they do that?
Well, until about a week ago, I would have said absolutely not, because it is a crime to provide what's known as material support to any group that the Secretary of State has listed as a foreign terrorist organization. And they put organizations on those lists based on findings that the group has engaged or engages in terrorist activity, which is violence to advance a political cause or intimidate a government or a civilian population. Hamas is on that list. And so it's a crime to send them money. It's a crime to sign up and serve them. But it has always been a separation between providing support, whether it's through service or through monetary or material goods, and speech. You could stand on a street corner all day and speak in support of Hamas or any other group that's on that list. And unless you're under their direction or control and working with them, you could not have any adverse legal consequence. Based on what we've seen in the case of Mr. Khalil, I'm worried that that's no longer the case because of this, until now, obscure provision in immigration law that says the Secretary of State may designate someone who poses a serious risk to the foreign policy of the United States. Now, a court is going to review that because as a green card holder, Mr. Khalil is entitled to due process rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. And so it may be that that was an arbitrary and baseless finding by the Secretary of State, in which case this may be reversed. But I think that it is a concerning time when a president is acting not just aggressively, which a president has a right to do to enforce the law to its legal limits, but perhaps crossing those legal limits. And I think that is what has so many people so concerned.
Now, there's some work in right now to make criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic, and if that's successful, could people get in trouble by criticizing Israel if it becomes anti-Semitic under the law?
Yeah, this is what should be the answer, Khalil, is that one can say whatever they want about a foreign country, about the foreign policy of a foreign country, about the military activities of a foreign country, can even say things under the law that are anti-Semitic. That is not illegal. There's a whole litany of cases that the Supreme Court decided in the 1960s and 1970s where members of the Ku Klux Klan would march in Jewish communities and say anti-Semitic things. And the court upheld their right to do so. And, there are all kinds of classic quotes about, I may despise everything these individuals are saying, but I will fight for their right to say them. So it has always been the case that we could say things no matter what people thought of them, criticizing someone for their religion or other kinds of things. If we're individuals, we are supposed to have a right to do that, as despicable as other people might think that is. But now, in light of what we have seen with Mr. Khalil, I'm worried that that line is getting blurred.
Yeah, yeah. And some have argued that, such activities could be hate speech. And I think the hate speech thing is a little bit misunderstood. I just wanted to clear it up. What's hate speech and when do you get in trouble?
Yeah, so hate speech ordinarily is not a crime. If I were to go out and stand on the street corner and start shouting epithets about people because of their race or religion or something like that, I have the right to do that. Where it becomes problematic, I think, is when it disrupts other people. So, if college campuses is a very good example of this. If there are people on a college campus who feel unsafe as a result of hate speech, then that can be a violation of some of the rules under federal statutes that say universities have an obligation to protect their students. So that's when we get into line crossing. So people who are, using slurs, using threatening language, that's the kind of thing that can make students feel unsafe on a college campus. And so there are some restrictions on our free speech rights when we're in certain settings. And one of those is a college campus where college administrators have to be mindful of all of the people there. So if somebody is shouting, anti-Muslim rhetoric or something, you can imagine the Muslim students will feel intimidated by that or
Hmm.
unwelcome by
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And so there has to be some effort taken to make sure that all students are protected.
So basically
So
criticizing the
that's
war
where we
in
see this.
Gaza. Yeah, yeah. So criticizing the war in Gaza
Yeah,
is
I mean,
one thing.
criticizing the war in Gaza. Yeah, criticizing the war in Gaza should be absolute fair game. Just as we had students criticize the war in Vietnam during the 1960s and early 1970s, criticizing the war in Gaza should be absolute fair game for any student who wants to do that. The allegations are that some students went further than that and made slurs or threats against Jewish students. Now, if that's the case, that would be the more extreme situation where students may have felt unsafe. But I do think that there is some effort here to blur those lines and suggest that merely advocating against the war in Gaza is somehow akin to hate speech. And I think we have to be very careful about line drawing in these instances, that political speech is permitted, but when you are harming the rights of other students to go about their business as a student, then that can be problematic. For instance, at the University of Michigan, where I teach, I know we had incidents where protesters interrupted student gatherings or occupied faculty buildings or administration buildings. That can be problematic, and you can make them leave if that is the case. But there could be trespassing, there could be property damage, there could be vandalism, there could be assault. All of those things are still crimes. You don't get inoculated from those things just because you're speaking in protest. But to speak about a war is very different from threatening the rights of other students.
Exactly, exactly. So we need to be aware of the content and we need to be aware of the setting.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And this is being tested, everywhere. And I hope that people understand their rights and that they understand that, you cannot make other people uncomfortable or threatening because, this way it does affect the overall liberty that we enjoy, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Our First Amendment is the first for a reason. It's because the founding fathers of our country thought it was so important for people to be able to speak out, especially against their government when they thought something was astray. In the same way the founders spoke out against Britain and declared our independence, the idea is that all citizens have a right to question what our government or what our leaders are doing in an effort to effect change. And so when there are negative consequences purely for free speech, that runs afoul of the First Amendment. So the advice I would give people is feel free to speak your mind, but realize that if and when you are harming the rights of other people to go about their business, to get an education, to have an orderly workplace, and other kinds of things, that's when you may be crossing the line.
Absolutely, absolutely. What we're talking about basically is just being responsible. I have the right to stand up on my porch and yell at all my neighbors. That may be my right, but does that really make a good neighborhood? It does not. So I hope people will be responsible if they practice their own right.
Sounds like a good plan, Khalil.
Before I let you go, is there anything else we need to know about this issue?
Well, I think one, I'm really grateful to you for informing your listeners about these rights because I think that one concern I have in this time is that because people are fearful, they see someone like Mahmoud Khalil and they become fearful and stop speaking. And that's when I think we worry about entering, a more authoritarian type of government than we have always enjoyed. So learning your rights, learning where those lines are is really important so that we can all be empowered to use our voices.
Absolutely. How's the book going?
Very well, thank you. I wrote this book about disinformation. It's called Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. And I think, every day we see examples of this, of how people use disinformation, misleading claims, claims with omissions to try to advance an agenda. And shows like yours that helps people learn real facts, gain real media literacy, I think is essential to overcoming some of those tactics.
I really appreciate your time, Barbara McQuade. Thank you so much for being with us. We're gonna take a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks, Miss McQuade.
Thank you, Khalil.
Bye now.
Behind the scenes, Michigan's public health team is working to make Michiganders across the state healthier, bringing healthcare closer to home with mobile clinics, increasing access to healthy food through farmers markets and WIC, doing hearing and vision screenings in schools, helping families navigate healthcare challenges. Learn more about how public health workers protect us all at michigan.gov/public health. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them 1 or 2 benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
Welcome back and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hashim with US Arab Radio. As you might have heard, President Trump and his new administration, his new team have been taken to court by states' advocacy groups and others over his executive orders and other administrative actions in recent weeks. The administration has been unhappy with some of the court rulings. In some instances, the president has proposed to cancel programs that are approved by Congress, which some see it as a violation of separation of powers. with with us, what we're going to be talking about this morning is, are we heading into a constitutional crisis if the president does not listen to the court? And is there an overreach here? What makes America different is we have this three branches of government, and then we have the separation of powers. With us this morning is Dr. Mitchel Sollenberger. He's a professor of political science at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I hope I didn't murder your name.
No, it was perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if the Trump administration does not follow court orders, are we going to be dealing with a constitutional crisis?
I think that's right. I think one of the mainstays within our system of governance is kind of the respect for the rule of law and institutional norms. And the federal courts, they're deciding, it's an adversarial system, so they're deciding real legal disputes, real questions, matters of the law or the Constitution, and their decisions are binding on the actors in question. In this case, one is the federal government and the Trump administration in particular. And it doesn't become a constitutional crisis until, let's say, the Trump administration loses in district court and then loses at the appellate court. There's appeals process, and then ultimately, if it goes to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court does side against the Trump administration on whatever the particular issue is, and then the Trump administration, let's say it's on impoundment, the refusal to spend certain money. If the Trump administration continues to do that, then yes, we would be in unprecedented waters, because the last time the presidential administration had decided unilaterally it wasn't going to spend money that Congress authorized, right, rightfully appropriated, was Richard Nixon. Mm-hmm. And during the Richard Nixon's presidency, there was lawsuits against what he did, the impoundment measures, right, just taking money and holding it. In those lawsuits, the administration lost, and even the Nixon administration capitulated, released the money, so to speak, spent it as authorized by Congress. And if that doesn't happen here, we would be in really unprecedented waters, where you have a president of the United States refusing to adhere to a judicial decision of the final branch of, or the final step of the judicial branch in the Supreme Court. So we'll see how that goes. We're not there yet.
Yeah, for the sake of our listeners, Congress makes laws, and the executive branch is supposed to carry out these laws.
Yes, correct.
Not come back and say we're not going to do it. Their job is to execute these laws.
Yes, there's actually a provision in the Constitution that says the president must take care that the laws are faithfully executed. It's called the Take Care Clause. And again, faithfully execute the laws. And so whatever is written down, right, particularly with appropriations, where Congress authorizes certain spending, $500 million to build a bridge, that's not discretionary on the executive branch's part. They need to build that particular bridge. They need to, spend that money on whatever it is. There is no discretion. And where the Nixon administration believed that there was discretion to, hold back money, Congress came back and authorized legislation saying, no, we control the spending. We have the power of the purse, and the president needs to do what's clearly stated in law, what we passed.
Mm-hmm. And if the third branch comes into play is when there's a disagreement, then they can go to court and say, and the court can say, no, you stay where you are and you stay where you are. Is that correct?
Exactly. So yeah, it would, again, the federal courts come into play here if there is this legal dispute. And what you're seeing with these lawsuits it's not really Congress who's challenging them. They're not It's the state attorney generals, it's private parties, a federal union challenging one executive action. So, but these are still right disputes that go into the court, and the court is fundamentally deciding whether the president overreached, used too much power, so to speak. And
Sure.
that's really the fundamental question about all of these different lawsuits is that can the president do X, Y, and Z? And at least early on, and these are at the lower level, right? The trial courts, the district courts. The president is losing these cases, but that doesn't mean that he'll lose ultimately, right?
Sure. Sure.
During the president's first term, he was losing at the district court level when it came to the travel bans, the Muslim travel ban controversy. And that case, those cases went all the way to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ultimately sided with the Trump administration on that particular action, saying he does have the legal authority to do that.
Yeah. The concern here is that some of the judges on the court, the Supreme Court, they're appointed by the president.
Yes.
And he appointed them because they're going to listen to him. And a lot of people in this country, or some people in this country, sees that as, they're going to listen to him, they're going to go with him. You have Congress, which majority are Republicans. Does that really increase the chances that we may end up in a constitutional crisis?
Well, using that construct or framework, I would say it probably decreases the chances, because if you have the Supreme Court and there's 6 members of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is made up of 9 justices.
Sure.
So in order to get a majority, you need at least 5 justices. 6 of the current 9 justices have been appointed by Republican presidents, so they're considered to be conservative justices. So not to say that they will always vote in line with Republican presidents, but generally speaking, their disposition to kind of presidential power, for instance, they see presidential power as a good thing. The last summer's Supreme Court decision in Trump versus the United States dealing with presidential immunity is a clear example of that. With those 6 justices, if any of these cases go up, I would imagine the Trump White House believes their odds are better than even, that they're going to win. And which is why, I don't know if you saw this, but just recently, the acting Solicitor General in the Justice Department has said they're going to be challenging a Supreme Court decision that restricts the president's power to remove executive branch officials. And this is a huge move, and really where you see the Trump administration being proactive in kind of pushing the outer bounds of what is presidential power. And because I think it believes that it has a federal court system that it will ultimately decide in its favor, and meaning ultimately the Supreme Court will. And you'd mentioned the Republicans controlling Congress. I think that's an important point as well. You have the House and Senate controlled by the Republican Party. It's a slim majority, but it's still an important majority, because if it was controlled by Democrats, you would probably see investigations. Investigations of the Trump administration to deal with, like, for instance, the Department of Government Efficiency, the Elon Musk organization, investigations on a variety of other fronts. But because of the fact that the Republicans control Congress, both the House and the Senate, you're not seeing those type of investigations. In fact, you're seeing that the Speaker of the House, the top Republican in the House of Representatives, is cheerleading the Trump administration and saying, like, we need more government efficiency. We need Elon Musk to be investigating the executive branch. And so there is no congressional pushback now. So I think with Congress and the Supreme Court, the Trump administration feels probably pretty confident of where they are, despite the setbacks that we've seen within the lower courts.
With the Democrats being a minority in both, is there anything they can do?
Well, they don't, not with formal congressional powers. So that's where I think you see the struggle. You see this playing out in real time. There's a lack of coherence. Though I would say during President Trump's first term back in 2017, they were in the minority as well. And so they couldn't, as being part of the minority party, they don't control the committees, so they can't actually schedule hearings. They can't investigate the departments. They have no subpoena power. And what the subpoena power is, and it's significant, is you issue a subpoena and it's an order that the executive branch entity, whether it's a department, agency, it produces documents. It might have to produce witnesses, and those people need to come forward to Congress and provide testimony or information on whatever it is they're investigating. And there's just a complete inability of the Democratic Party to do that. And where they can push is really more in the media, in the electorate, if you will, and kind of rally support around what they see as being perceived power grabs by the president or bad public policies. Because in the end, I mean, people might see these moves in the abstract. I mean, what do they relate to us? But it's ultimately about what the president is doing about public policy outcomes. Are these good public policy decisions being made, despite the power question, despite the process? And that's a question to be determined. And I think it's up to the Democrats, if they ever want to get back in the majority, is to convince the public, the American people, that their positions are stronger and will produce better public policy outcomes than Republican positions.
Yeah. So they really need to rally for the midterm and change the composition of Congress so they can play like they did in the first term of the Trump administration, to come back and play that balancing role. Otherwise, things are going to continue like that. Or
Yes,
continue
exactly
like
right.
that. Yeah. Because I don't see I see tremendous, not control, but I mean, President Trump has kept Republicans in line. I haven't seen that since Ronald Reagan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you're right, but I would say it's way too early.
Yeah.
Just based on what I heard about some of the internal discussions with the Republican caucus, the Republicans in the House, around tax plans and what they're going to do in that policy realm, there was a lot of disagreement, and it's a razor slim majority in both the House and the Senate. So let's see how that plays out. I think in his first term, they thought right when Trump got elected and he was in his kind of honeymoon phase, that they thought they were going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Right? They had unified government back then, and that didn't happen. So, we'll see how they govern, right, with this razor thin majority. And I think this is probably what benefits Democrats, right?
Sure.
If the Republicans can't govern, and I think that's what the American people will care about. If they can't govern, if they can't execute on public policy and make the American people's lives better, they're going to pay for it in a couple of years, right? As you said, the midterm elections come up quickly, and you could see a pivot quickly from Republican control of Congress to a Democratic control, and that's going to really change the fundamental fabric of what we're seeing playing out in the Trump administration.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned that, I keep thinking about the inflation and prices, and President Trump campaigned on taming those, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to if he continues doing what he's doing, it was obvious. If you remove immigrants who do the work and then impose tariffs, that's going to drive prices up.
Yes.
And inflation is not going to go down, and that's not going to work for him. And if Democrats use that well to rally, they may succeed.
Yes. Yeah. The two areas you hit on, immigration and really, I would call it also foreign diplomacy with this tariffs. I mean, administrations coming out and attacking two of our North American allies, right, in Mexico and Canada, and attacking in ways that are somewhat confusing, right? The Canadians have had to respond not only forcefully, but respond in a way that they created their own czar, a fentanyl czar, right, to deal with drugs. And as a public policy challenge, I don't think there's this large caravan of drugs coming over from the Canadian provinces into the United States. So it isn't this public policy problem I think the Trump administration's making it out to be. But again, getting back to the immigration is a country. And most Western democracies are struggling with a demographic problem, right? We just have fewer people coming up in the newer generations, and we have the older generations made a population churn where the country's getting smaller domestically. Where I think purely for economic reasons and business reasons, having immigrants come here and work hard and add to the social fabric of the country, not only social but economic fabric, that's needed. It's a public policy gain. It'll help out all industries. And I'm speaking as somebody who works in an industry, higher education, where we're seeing the demographic problem, right? There's just fewer high school graduates in the state of Michigan, for example, than there was 10 years ago. And that's going to continue on. So, those public policy issues right now are even hurting, and going forward, at least on the medium and long term, they certainly have the potential to hurt more.
As an educator at the university level, are you concerned about the administration's the Trump administration trying to cut research money?
Yes, it's the way that universities they survive, or the business model of universities. It's not based on taking money primarily from students, right, through tuition dollars. Students aren't having to pay what is the full price of an education, and part of that has to do with the federal money coming through Pell eligible students, right? So that's one way. And that's where I think the federal government absorbs an indirect cost. But the other way is through these research dollars. And as faculty members, scholars, we tend to get federal grants from other places. But these federal grants not only help with our research, but they help run a university, make a university run. And the Trump administration sort of pulling that back away, and doing so through this kind of empowerment means saying, Congress appropriated this money, but we're not going to spend it, and we're going to keep it for ourselves. That hurts the university because we have to pay our bills. We have lights to keep on. We have that need to run as part of the education process. And so the effect on research has an effect on the classroom. And I think a lot of people don't understand that what the Trump administration's doing is seriously raised alarm bells within leadership circles in higher education, and I don't know what's going to go forward, because really what the Trump has done is it's been fast and furious. The Trump administration has done. So what comes next, we don't know. But yes, it's caused a lot of consternation, at least. But again, it's a complicated matter, but it's one that boils down to, if we don't have this money, then there would be serious cuts, and not only serious cuts that would affect research, it would affect our teaching, and to be able to kind of build the citizens of tomorrow, right? To be able to shape and meld young minds, which is going to be a tragedy, because United States is a leader in higher education across the world.
Yeah. The cynical part of me, I've been covering politics and governments since the 90s, early 90s. I had 3 different newspapers in Florida, Texas, and at the Arbor News for years and years. When I hear the administration talking about tariffs and immigration, I've always want to know, what is it really exactly they're working on that has nothing to do with these two, and using these two things as a distraction? It seems like they're remaking the idea of what America is. I've always thought of America, this enterprise where you have the civil servants. These are the people who do the work. Politicians come and go, administrations come and go, but these people are steadily doing the work, and they're doing and keeping the system going. Is this administration trying to change the system? This is. I'm trying to figure out, what is it that they're doing that's so important to them and to this nation, but they're not telling us.
Yes, I think you're hitting on something that's important, because these actions, what we're seeing are byproducts. They're symptoms of larger problems, and I think you can trace this back going, more than a decade, but at least in terms of where it comes from. You had Trump and Bernie Sanders, who kind of rose up in this populist movement, and the populism was popping up even before um, that election cycle, and you saw it through, the Occupy Wall Street, the Tea
Hmm.
Party
Hmm.
movement, and these were fundamentally movements about governing systems and society, the economy not working. And I think in that respect, Trump and Sanders on the Democratic Party side tapped into something that's real and fundamental. Inflation, even though it's happening right now, it's been going up over the last few decades. And not only inflation, but just prices of goods, groceries, fast foods. I mean, there's studies that show that those price increases have far outstripped inflation. And you have people whose paychecks year to year aren't meeting those, right? So they're less off now than they were 5, 10 years ago. So those kind of economic struggles, I think Sanders and Trump tapped into. But with Trump, what he's manifested, I think, is something a little bit different than just kind of economic populism, which I think somewhat of what his messaging is, but of the policy objectives, as you indicated with tariffs and immigration, wouldn't necessarily get us there. But it is a feeling of certain segments of the population of being left behind or left out. And I think that's the American First policy initiative, right? He signed an executive order that told the State Department, create an American First policy, right? And what do those guidelines look like? Well, we'll see, but you can kind of see where it's about, economic nationalism, which is where you get the protectionist tariffs. It's about kind of putting up walls on the border to, not let the others, if you will, in keeping good people in. It's that kind of othering that I think it's pretty clear in the actions that are happening. And yeah, it's a fundamental reconstruction, I think, of the American ideas. And
Sure.
how this plays out, we'll see. There were some who were saying when Trump lost that Trump was an aberration, right? An anomaly. I was less sold on that proposition because
Yeah,
I understood that Trump, even without Trump, the symptoms are there. The economy's not working for many
exactly.
people.
Exactly.
So really, it's up to the Democratic Party and Republican parties to come up with better public policy solutions, not just on food, inflation, prices, but I mean, basic things like housing, right? People can't afford to buy a house. People are struggling with rents, and these things matter, which is why I think the Democrats, being in the minority, them talking about like a hiring freeze in government, or they're talking about, let's say, presidential overreach and the removal of power, or even impoundments for that matter, that doesn't really hit home. It doesn't resonate.
Exactly.
So, talking about these things, I think, are much more important because these things are the lives of Americans, citizens of the United States, and frankly, anybody that's in the country feels these things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Final thoughts?
My final thoughts is I'm eagerly awaiting to see what happens with, the actions that are happening in the courts, and, whether we'll get to a constitutional crisis. Because although we started the conversation speaking about a constitutional crisis, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
We need to have the process, and this is the beauty of a democracy. A democracy that functions on the rule of law is that there are these processes that need to play out, and they haven't been played out yet. And I do still have a fundamental faith in really the fabric of what makes the country great and our governing systems great to hold. Even in the face of the economic troubles and what is some would call authoritarian or populist regime in the Trump administration. So I would just ask that people do pay attention and to watch, but keep a little bit of optimism and faith, because that makes life worth living.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope that they fix it before it really breaks, because it has been broken many times and we don't want to see it break.
Yeah,
I want to thank you for being with us this morning. And it's a little bit complicated topic, but I just wanted to break it down as much as possible so our listeners can understand really what we could be dealing with down the road.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
Every year in Michigan, approximately 3,000 people die of drug overdose. Today's drugs are more addictive and deadlier than ever before. Most street opioids tested contain a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. Drug overdoses are preventable. Keep naloxone on hand. Together, we can change the statistics. Learn how to save lives at michigan.gov/SUD. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Last Ramadan, you made it possible. 9,599 food baskets, 2.9 million meals, clean water for 56,600 people, hope for over 13,000 orphans. This is the difference your giving creates. Lives changed, dignity restored, hope renewed. As Ramadan approaches, the need is urgent. Families are waiting. Orphans are depending on us. Clean water is still out of reach for many. Every dollar, every basket, every well makes an impact. Be the difference they're praying for. Don't wait for Ramadan to start. Make your impact now. Donate now at lifeusa.org.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hashim with US Arab Radio. As you well know, several people in our community and thousands nationwide have been deported or are in the process of being deported by the Trump administration for immigration charges or on immigration charges. Also, a Columbia University student with a green card is being deported as well, and that may be politically motivated. We don't know yet. What do we need to know? With us this morning is Shahad Atiya. She is an attorney specializing in immigration, international family law, and criminal matters. She is also a professor of Crimmigration at the University of Michigan in Dearborn. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me again, Mr. Hashim.
I appreciate it. And last time when we talked, it was before the administrations took over, or just about. We were preparing for this period. Now it's been 2 months. There's been a lot of news. What's the update?
So what we're seeing these days is that the Department of Homeland Security is using its expansive power to go after people. The top priority has been people with already existing orders of removal. So these are people that went through the immigration court process. Either they've been ordered removed in the past and returned to the United States, or sometimes they had withholding of removal, like the people that we're seeing in the Hamama case, that now ICE wants to effectuate their removal. So they're applying existing orders. That's the largest group of people, is
Okay.
people with existing orders of removal are getting removed.
What do you expect next?
So the people that have a pathway to be able to fight that, we're fighting for their cases in federal courts. The people that do not are already, we're finding out they're already on their way home. So the people that we can focus on, the people that we've been informing there are hundreds of, if not thousands of people in the United States that currently qualify for citizenship that are not applying for citizenship, and they should be. These are people with green cards that have been in the United States either 3 to 5 years, and even and they currently qualify for citizenship, and they need to apply for that. It is very important for people to apply for citizenship as soon as possible.
Do people who have a green card or are on a visa, do they have rights in this country?
So the people that have a green card are in a different category than the people who have visas. There are non-immigrant visas and immigrant visas. Like a student visa is a non-immigrant visa because there's no pathway for you to permanently stay in the United States. People that have green cards are in a different category where there are permanent residents in the United States. For all intents and purposes in life, we treat them like a United States citizen minus the right to serve on a jury, to run for office, and to vote. But they can buy a home. They are allowed to exercise the same constitutional rights of not being questioned without the presence of an attorney, with a police officer. Now, when it comes to immigration, though, they have different rights where we can place them in removal proceedings and take that status away from them. Whereas if you have U.S. citizenship, it's very hard for me to place you in removal proceedings and take away your citizenship unless there's an underlying reason for it.
What do people need to know?
So what people need to know now is if you have the right to any pathway in immigration, now is the time to ask those questions. The worst thing we can see is that somebody qualified for rights and they did not take advantage of it at the right time and they lost out on an opportunity. If you have any outstanding reason for you to check your status or a reason for your family to check on their visas or things like that, this is the time to take care of these things. The other thing that we're anticipating is a possible travel ban. And so people need to think about letting their loved ones know that maybe this is not the time to travel to the countries that are supposed to be proposed to be on the travel ban. And I know it's been really hard for families to say, well, I want to see my family for Eid. I want to go see my family. I haven't seen them in many years, or I'm a student and I've been studying here for many years. But we are advising people, if you have legal status in the United States, this is not the time to travel internationally.
Absolutely. Yeah, this travel ban is another headache. Any other issues that I didn't ask you that people need to know?
You know what? People need to be informed of their rights and people need to exercise their rights. People need to know that sometimes when they're coming to the United States Port of Entry, that CBP officers, this is Customs and Border Protection, they are allowed to ask you, to put you in secondary questioning and ask you questions about who you saw, what was the trip for, what countries did you visit? And what we're hearing is during those interviews, people do not have access to their phones. They're not usually allowed to inform families or call their attorney. So they need to be very explicit about, if they want an attorney, that they are not going to answer any questions without the presence of an attorney.
Wonderful. If people have additional questions and need to reach you, how can they reach you?
They can reach us at www.atiyalaw.com, which is ATIYALAW.com, or they can call our office at 248-951-2450.
Could you repeat the phone number, please?
Yes, 248-951-2450.
Well, Shahad, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. This is a developing story, is going to continue to develop, and it seems that the government as well is kind of trying to do more if they can get away with it, and we'll see what happens with that one as well.
I'm always here to update the community and chat with you about any developing legal matters, and here to answer any questions for you.
Yeah, because it is very confusing. There's a lot of information out there. It's not really accurate. So we just want to make sure that people are getting the right information.
Absolutely. Things are changing at a very rapid pace, and we need to stay updated because it affects all of the people that we know in our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on the show. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Michigan's winter forecast is snow, snow, and more snow. And for a little variety, ice. Since that means slippery roads, stay safe by following these driving tips. Don't use cruise control on ice and snow. Use turn signals sooner to give others more time to react. Keep your car's fluids, tires, and wipers well maintained. And most important of all, drive slow on ice and snow. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
As the weather gets colder, it's a good idea to layer up with scarves, hats, and mittens. Another layer of protection this season is to get your flu and COVID-19 vaccines. You can get both vaccines at the same time. Talk to your healthcare provider or learn more at michigan.gov/COVID-flu-RSV and layer up for some added peace of mind. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you to Barbara McQuade for being on the show talking about the First Amendment, and for Professor Sollenberger for being on the show talking about the separation of power. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.